Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. The Supreme Court of Indiana is now in session. Please be seated.
Welcome to all of you on behalf of my colleagues for such an important turning point in our court's history. I welcome you on their behalf of Chief Judge Baker and his comrades, on behalf of Judge Fisher of the Tax Court, and on behalf of our trial court colleagues who joined us this morning. We have so many remarkable people with us. I'll introduce Governor Daniels in a moment. Seated next to him, Mayor Greg Ballard and his predecessor, Bart Peterson. Thanks to you for coming. And next to them, Judy O'Bannon. We also have several of our state officers this morning, including Tim Berry and Greg Zeller. Thanks to the two of you. And a number of members of the Indiana General Assembly, Senators Bray and Lewis and Steele and Lannon, Minority Leader Bosma, Representatives Day and Delaney, and Mrs. Delaney. The entire United States District Court has joined us today. Hope there's somebody over there in case a TRO comes in the door. Chief Judge Rick Young, Judges Sarah Evans Barker, William Lawrence, Jane Magnus Stinson, and Tanya Walton Pratt, Magistrate Judges Tim Baker and Ken Foster, and the acting U.S. Attorney, Tim Morrison, is here, but good news, help is on the way. The Senate last night confirmed Joe Hoxett, so we'll have a United States Attorney. We welcome Dean Gary Roberts from the law school at Indiana University. Three of our former colleagues, or two of our former colleagues and one of our future colleagues are here this morning. Justices Roger DeBruler and Myra Selby. Ted's successor, Steve David, and his wife, Catherine Pulley, are both with us this morning. And finally, I'd like to especially introduce someone who's, it occurred to me, for virtually every governor and mayor for a whole generation, the utility infielder, Peggy Boehm. Thanks for There's somebody who couldn't be here this morning, but who asked me to read a message on his behalf. Ted Boehm's service as a judge has been simply exemplary. He is also an outstanding human being. All Hoosiers should be grateful for his public service, and I am personally grateful for his friendship. Signed, Senator Evan Bayh. Wishes to be remembered too. Well, when Ted leaves today as Justice 104. It will be the longest time since Justices 1 and 2, Holman and Scott, over here on our wall, left in January of 1831. It is an important career, an important occasion to mark, I suggest to you, a civic moment. And of course, this morning's assembly demonstrates the reality of that fact. So many others here this morning whom I didn't introduce. People from the worlds of charity and civic life, from business, from the professions, who are themselves household names. People come to praise Ted Boehm. Sitting side by side, political leaders of our state, former opponents. All of this reflects the decency of our state's people, I think, the decency of its civic life and of its leadership, and demonstrates that Indiana is not really that big a place after all, but rather a place where genuine admiration and mutual affection are the rule and not the exception. So we've come to say grace over the judicial career of someone whose service in the third branch is one prominent component of a life chock full of multiple roles, all of them aimed at making Indiana and Indianapolis all they can be. But we come to praise Boehm, not to bury him. Thank you. Yes. And so it will be that we start with our state's chief executive. Now, no need to offer any biography in calling upon him this morning. But suffice it to say that just as Chief Judge Young and I believe that Indiana government is better when people from Evansville are close at hand, that I believe the country is better off when people from Indiana occupy the national stage. And it lifts my spirits to know that Mitch Daniels is in a position to influence the future of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mitch Daniels.
Chief Justice, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honor, Your Honors, plural, and good friends, I thought I caught a good break this morning, but I was wrong. I got back in the middle of the night, hadn't had much sleep, and I encountered Judge Friedlander on the steps coming in. And I said, Zeke, I'm so glad to see you. Help me out here. In an hour, I got to say something good about Boehm, and I don't know what it is going to be. The judge said, that is a stumper. He says, you're on your own. So I'll do my best, but of course, there's nothing hard about it except disciplining oneself to stop with the superlatives. I'm not at all surprised to see an SRO crowd here today. Before it goes to his head, I would remind Boehm you can't read everything into that. It's said that at Peyton Manning's Tennessee commencement, the other SEC football coaches all showed up to make sure he was really leaving. I think if there's a value-added comment to make to what is already so well known in this room, all over this state, what I know will be said by others, maybe it's just simply this. I've never been a judge, can only imagine the difficulties, the special pressures that come with this sacred and important office. But clearly there's a need, always a special need, more so than that which descends on the rest of us who temporarily occupy public life, public office, to preserve detachment and independence. And sometimes, I suppose, some sense of removal, even from close friends, in order that the integrity, that the iron independence of the judiciary never be doubted for a moment. It must be a hard thing. Ted Boehm somehow, and it's reflected in your numbers and in the variety of people who have come together this morning, Ted Boehm has squared this circle in a remarkable way. He has not simply before, and I know following his judicial service, but even during it, found appropriate ways to be of this community and of this entire state community. And we're so fortunate that he came our way, that a person of this degree of talent was willing to lend it and invest it in year after year, chapter after chapter, in a diversity of ways, the like of which we haven't seen. He has been a major part in the establishment, to which I think everyone here, of which everyone here is aware, but to which I can testify, of a national reputation that Indiana has as fine a Supreme Court as the country knows. And he leaves to his successor and to his colleagues a very, very high target in order to maintain that stellar reputation. So I just want to say to you, Ted, if that's permissible, Your Honor, of course, like everyone in the room and thousands who wish they were here, you have honored us in more ways than any other person I can name on this at this moment. More than anybody else I know, you bring to my mind Justice Brandeis's famous maxim that in a free society, the highest public office is that of citizen. You've held multiple offices, and each of them, including this most distinguished of all, you have been our model citizen. And we will not see your like again, but we will each attempt in our own ways to emulate it. Congratulations and thanks for a great life of service.
Wonderful. Cody is a graduate of Xavier University and of Indiana University, and since 1999 he has been judge of the Floyd Circuit Court. For this morning's purposes, he is the president of the Indiana Judges Association. All of Indiana's judges met in their annual conference last week, and I saw the list of all the people who've served as president of the Indiana Judges Association, and I think I have known 18 of them. And I say to him in your presence that he has been one of the best. Judge Terry Cody.
Thank you, Chief Justice, for those kind words. Justice and Mrs. Boehm, Chief Justice Shepard, Governor Daniels, members of the Indiana Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and Tax Court, and distinguished guests. It's my privilege to speak on behalf of Indiana's judges at this ceremony. I am from New Albany. The Chief Justice has already said I'm judge of the Floyd Circuit Court. New Albany is on the Ohio River, across from Louisville, Kentucky, and it was founded in 1813. Justice Boehm, in southern Indiana, we would pronounce your name Beam.
It's Boehm in Cincinnati.
And by the way, a little known fact, Justice Boehm, that you probably don't know, but Chief Justice Shepard can trace his Indiana roots to New Albany as early as 1818. Now, the officers of the association and its members salute you on your distinguished career as a member of the court. In talking with some of my colleagues last week at the annual conference, we wondered, with your retirement, who is going to teach the constitutional law courses? You certainly have been able to express to us at the trial court level the constitutional law issues, their vagaries, and how we are to apply it in our busy courts. So I'm going to encourage you later today to call Vicki Davis, who's the education director at the Indiana Judicial Center, and volunteer to come back and teach at our conferences.
We'll give you senior judge days.
I'm sure you have many things that you are going to do in your retirement. And I am extending an offer that you serve as senior judge in the Floyd Circuit Court. And I will be submitting your name to state court administration at the appropriate time. Okay. Finally, on behalf of the association, I'm going to present you with a gift that is a product of southern Indiana, which many of you know as the area of the knobs. I assure you that the gift was made legally, and it is of the highest quality. And We hope that you will enjoy it. And I'm going to step over with the gift and thank you for your dedicated service to the citizens of Indiana. You'll need this bag to carry it home.
The only time this shot's been had.
Do you drink it or smoke it or sit on it? I need help. It's in a trick bag. Okay. I'll keep this. All right. Guess we just pen and paper. Oh. This is a project. Anybody got a knife? Anybody get through security with a knife? I know our governor is a man who can meet any situation. Oh my gosh. Oh, the dreaded pecking gooseberry. All right. Here, you get this back before.
Yeah, right.
You do drink it. Excellent. Needs a knife back. All right. Is this a challenge, Terry? Nobody warned me of this. Well, there's got to be a key to this. Did you pack this, Cody? Tell us what it is. We got to run this like a Swiss railroad.
What you have are products of the Huber Winery in Starlight, Indiana.
Thank you very much.
Now there's and a bottle of their brandy.
Excellent.
And as far as I know, it is the only legal still in Indiana.
So that is an appropriate present. Thank you very much.
Many of you would know.
Good show.
Yeah? You done? Ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. Many of you would know Rod Morgan in his capacity as a partner in the law firm of Bingham McHale, where he leads the business solutions team. More important, or maybe also important, as Governor Daniels has observed, Rod Morgan is a citizen, a university trustee, president of the Partnership for Affordable Housing, and president of the Indianapolis Black Chamber of Commerce. For this morning's purposes, Indiana lawyers are proud to say he is also the president of the Indiana State Bar Association. Rod Morgan.
The
Mr. Chief Justice, Justices, distinguished guests, on behalf of the 12,500 members of the Indiana State Bar Association, it's my distinct pleasure to recognize the contributions to the legal landscape made by Justice Boehm. I don't have a packet that's going to take 4 minutes to open, but I have 5 minutes to speak, and I won't be taking all of those. Justice Boehm has been an active supporter of the State Bar Association. He can be found in nearly every major ISBA function. On behalf of the members of the State Bar Association, it's my great privilege to thank you for your service to the lawyers and citizens of the state of Indiana, to wish you well in your retirement, and to present you with this numbered print of the Supreme Court bench where you administered justice for so long. And it looks like this for those who are looking.
Christine Hayes Hickey is a partner in the firm of Rubin and Levin, where she practices creditors' rights and commercial litigation. In addition to her multiple commitments to improving the profession here in Indiana, she's been a director of the Commercial Law League of America. For today's purposes, we're happy to say she is president of the Indianapolis Bar Association. President Chris Hickey.
Thank you, Chief Justice, Justices, members of the judiciary, and distinguished guests. It is my honor and privilege to represent the Indianapolis Bar Association on this special occasion as we celebrate the numerous contributions Justice Boehm has made to our legal profession and to our community. Justice Boehm has not only served this court with distinction, but he has been a strong supporter of the Indianapolis Bar Association for many years. He has served as a vice president, and he has also served on the Justice Center Task Force, where I had the privilege to know him and to learn firsthand what a wonderful person that he truly is. Despite the many demands on Justice Boehm's schedule, he always has remained accessible to our Indianapolis Bar, and for that we thank him. He has given of his time and talents freely, and that unique relationship that we share with exceptional jurists like Justice Boehm makes us the envy of bar associations across the country. As a token of our appreciation, the Indianapolis Bar Association has agreed to commission a biography of Justice Boehm so that your legal legacy can be preserved and shared for generations to come. Justice Boehm personally, and on behalf of the nearly 5,000 members at the Indianapolis Bar Association, we thank you. We congratulate you on a remarkable career, and we wish you great happiness as you embark on this next chapter of your life. Thank you.
Wonderful. One of the great surprises and pleasures of appellate judging is the grand group of young lawyers with whom one becomes ultimately long associated as one's law clerks take their own place in the profession. Justice Boehm's clerks this morning will be represented by Cynthia Bowerly, who, in addition to her work at Jones Day and on the staff of Senator Chuck Schumer, has, upon appointment by President Bush since June of 2008, been a member of the Federal Elections Commission. Won't you join in welcoming Commissioner Cynthia Bowerly?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. Governor Daniels, Justices of the Court, Justice Boehm, Peggy, Deborah, fellow clerks and honored guests. It is my privilege and daunting duty to attempt to share with you
what it is like to be a clerk for this wonderful justice. I think the presence here today of so many of us from around the state and around the country to mark this occasion tells you more than I ever could about what it means to us. But let me try. Clerking for Justice Boehm was an LLM in critical legal thinking and writing. If you've read even one of his opinions, you know his reasoning is thorough, the writing is clear, concise, often witty, and has more baseball analogies than one might expect in a judge's opinion. You also know that that opinion is authored by someone who both understands the complexities of the law and its implication for his neighbors. What those opinions may not tell you is that the judge is a great teacher. As an eager young lawyer, fresh out of law school, and fairly convinced of one's abilities, having landed a clerkship and all, the first week in Justice Boehm's chambers quickly demonstrates how little 3 years of law school can actually teach you. On day one, Justice Boehm, with patience for every new crop of clerks, asks you to get to work. You get a case file, you start to read, you start research all the precedents. A day later, you sit down with the judge. You believe you understand the case and the law and how it fits together, and you go into the judge's office to discuss the matter with him. And after that discussion, during which the judge has patiently and kindly walked you through the case you just spent days immersing yourself in, and he read while you were sitting there in front of him, you return to your desk with pages and pages of text edited beyond their original recognition. And I will note for my fellow clerks and to Deborah, many of those pages were illegible. But that was also a skill we learned, translating the hieroglyphics of Justice Boehm. And you get back to your desk and you realize exactly how much you do not know despite your law degree and your bar admission. And then you realize this was probably an easy case because it was the first one you got. And there are much, much harder cases coming before the court. And then you realize that Justice Boehm could have written the opinion, gotten all of his colleagues to sign on, and changed the batting order on his fantasy baseball roster in the time it took you just to read the appellate opinion. And it's then that you realize how fortunate you are to be able to clerk with this justice for this year or two of your life. Justice Boehm makes the work of judging look easy. Certainly there are arguments to construct and case law to explain and set in context. But at the end of the day, even the hard cases looked easy for him. And I think it was because he was confident of his conclusion, whether expected or not, whether popular or not, whether subject to political or press criticism. He has written opinions for the majority of the court when the stakes were high and a quick decision was needed. He has dissented when he felt compelled by the finality of a sentence in the face of uncertainty about mental illness. And he has concurred when that compromise, although not his preference, prevented a harsher punishment. And in each case, whether majority opinion or dissent, with humility, humanity, and sometimes humor, he's explained why the law, in his view, required that result. And he did so, always with respect for his colleagues, even when, and particularly when, they disagreed. The lessons of the clerkship are not limited to the legal principles or the art of judging. One cannot help but become a better writer working with Justice Boehm. There is a reason his opinions are easy to read, clear, and elegant. His writing is precise, never a wasted word, never a word out of place. I cannot forget the look on the face of my co-clerk, Professor Schum, when the judge returning a draft to me at my desk saying, "The only is in the wrong place. Only I love you. I only love you. I love you only. Don't you see?" Of course, I couldn't see anything at that point in time. I was so flustered by this very tall judge who I worked for only a few weeks reciting this example, and the look on Deborah and Joel's face didn't help at all. But I learned from the judge that not only the only, but every other word has a particular place. And the court and those subject to its jurisdiction deserve that kind of clear writing and attention to detail. The only example is universal among clerks, and I assume they, like I, have attempted to pass this important lesson on to others. I now have 3 young lawyers working for me at the Federal Election Commission, and when the newest started over the summer, I overheard the other 2 tell her, be careful. She has this thing about only. I took great pride in that, and I'm certain that my fellow law clerks, whether partners at law firms or professors of law, are ensuring that no only goes unplaced. On behalf of my fellow law clerks, I would like to thank you for your service to the state of Indiana and to this court, but mostly for your service to us. We are better lawyers because of it. And as we gathered last night to celebrate with the judge and Peggy and his family, we talked about how it really was the best job we ever had. And we miss it. And if you weren't leaving, you might have some applications for next year coming from some of us. And we know that whatever job any of us have in the future, whatever we do with our lives, it is built upon the foundation of our time with you. And we thank you for that gift. Congratulations. We look forward to your next adventure. Thank you.
Members of the Supreme Court family, broadly defined, arrive here from many different places and depart for fascinating next assignments. Whether it was our reporter of decisions, Benjamin Harrison, who heard the guns at Fort Sumter and walked out the door to take his commission in the Union Army, or Justices Shake and Richmond, who left here to become judges at the War Crimes Tribunal held in Nuremberg. But as Governor Daniels has suggested, the best of the lot have both done law and done citizenship. And so it has been with Ted Boehm. Whether it was his role as CEO of the Pan Am Games, where he became the only person I know who's met Fidel Castro, or the founding president of the Indiana Sports Corporation, or the chair of the Cultural Development Commission, or the president of the Penrod Society, or the leading role he plays at the USOC, or as one of the founders of the Economic Club of Indianapolis, or his day jobs at Lilly and General Electric and Baker and Daniels. In all of these, he has been energized by a sentiment of community improvement, not unlike that expressed by Carl Sandburg when he wrote, "We are the greatest city, the greatest nation. Nothing like us ever was." For us here, Ted has been a player of remarkable breadth. Much of that has occurred at the highest end of the legal profession, for Ted is an elected member of the American Law Institute, and it doesn't get any more sophisticated than that. Likewise, he leaves behind a body of appellate work, prolific legal thinking that will last at least for decades. And finally, a willingness to put himself in play on basic, if grand, improvements, like Indiana's jury pool list, you'll recall, recently declared the most inclusive, the most up-to-date anywhere in the United States. Many people had their hands on that lever, but at the center of the game was Ted Boehm. All of these achievements and many others, I'm happy to announce on behalf of the student editors, will be featured in the upcoming edition this winter of the Indiana Law Review. The four of us, Ted's law partners over these last 14 years, likewise have a gift, and it will be presented by my colleague, Justice Rucker.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Excuse me. Actually, deciding upon an appropriate gift for our retiring colleague was something of a challenge for us. We debated the issue and considered several options. In the end, with nary a dissenting vote, we settled upon something that we thought was both utilitarian and also would remind our colleague of his years of service with us. As many of you may know, Justice Theodore R. Boehm, the 104th Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court, is an avid golfer. So, in keeping with the utilitarian aspect of this gift, we decided upon, and on behalf of the members of the court, I now present this token of our collective esteem. And because it is gift wrapped, and we don't want to spend a lot of time trying to get to it, may I describe it? It's a specially measured, nearly handcrafted, tailor-made 3-wood golf club. 4-degree club head loft, stiff graphite shaft, with a head cover that's embroidered, quote, 104 TRB. We trust that you will use it often as you hit the links. Now remember I said part of this was having him remember us as well. So with respect to presenting a gift that would remind Justice Boehm of his colleagues, what most of you do not know is that Justice Boehm is an expert on and is knowledgeable about a whole host of subjects. And during our weekly conference, he often reminds us of that in his own unique way. So I bring to his attention the inscribed metal tag attached to this 3-wood, which he may or may not wish to share with you and elaborate upon. To Justice Boehm, on behalf of the
Thank you. Wrapping. I'm sorry to report that the 104 is about an accurate prediction of how to use this thing. All right. What am I supposed to read here? Bifocals are a terrible thing, folks. Well, anyway, this is terrific. What's on this? There we go. Here's your tag. Here's my tag. I'll leave you guessing.
Nicely done.
Thank you. You're gonna spill it, aren't you?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm a safe guy. I can keep safe. Ted Boehm, you have added luster to this bench, uncommon power to our deliberations, and energy and elegance to everything you've touched. We thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Justice Ted Boehm.
Thank you very much. My thanks to Governor Daniels and the State Bar Association and Rod Morgan and the Judges Association and Judge Cody, Chief Justice Shepard, and talk about Cindy in a second. I do appreciate the kind words today, but they've omitted what I consider my most significant contribution to the Indiana judiciary. As you may have noted, the odd order in which we entered the room, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4. It falls to the second junior justice to lead this parade when we enter the courtroom through some tradition whose origin is lost in the midst of time and no one can explain. very well. But that means, of course, that it's my job to get my colleagues lined up at the appointed hour so that we do, in fact, enter the courtroom when we say we're going to enter the courtroom, which, as you noted today, we came close, but missed the cigar by a few minutes. But in order to discharge this duty, several years ago I acquired at the little shop in the mall, the Dakota shop, an atomic watch, which communicates every evening, every morning at 2 a.m. with the Naval Observatory in Fort Collins, Colorado, and resets itself precisely to the Naval Observatory's time, so that I'm in a position at 9 a.m. when we start our arguments to give this high sign to the sheriff. He bangs the gavel, and out we come, right on time for the audience, which sometimes looks like this, more often is much sparser, but we're webcasting, so we want to do this on time. I regard that as a major achievement, and no mean feat to herd this gaggle of felines here. One of them's always wandering off to the restroom or forgot something in his chambers. And, you know, come on, we're gonna do it. So, Bob, I have a gift for you. I think you know what may be in that box. Wear it well and proudly. And certainly my thanks to the court. I want to echo the comments that Governor Daniels made. This is and has been and will be one of the finest Supreme Courts in the state. There's no question about it. I just want to reiterate my own view that it is a collegial exercise. Anything the court does takes at least 3 of us, and usually 5. We are, as those of you who are court followers know, usually unanimous, and we try to be. But the quality of work and the integrity of this court is really unsurpassed in the country. I salute my colleagues, and I'm confident that with Steve David's succession in my chair, that will continue. I want to express particular thanks to Governor Daniels and Mayor Ballard and Mayor Peterson and Judy O'Bannon for coming today. It's just an honor to have distinguished leaders show up here and sit in a hot room for a half an hour or an hour now. And I appreciate it very much. And I want to express particular thanks to my clerks who came here today, but particularly to Kevin Green, who came from San Diego, and Allison Brown and Cindy Bowerly, who came from Washington, D.C., to join us today. And Cindy, thank you very much for those kind comments. My daughters, Macy and Jenny's husband, Eric, are here today, and David Harris, Peggy's son, who is the leader of the Mind Trust. Some of you may have read about David in the paper. Stay tuned, more to come. He's doing something quite fantastic. Everyone here in this room has played some important role in my life, some for 40 years, others more recently. Many of you have opened opportunities for me. Others have been colleagues and mentors, role models and supporters in efforts across a wide range of subjects. To start naming each of you would take the rest of the day. Just let me know that as you look around the room, everyone here has been somebody who's been very important to me and to the life of our state and city. I also want to express my appreciation to my assistant, Deborah Moss, who's been with me from the outset. She's put up with my handwriting and my idiosyncrasies since 1996. And also, I want to thank the unsung heroes, far too numerous to name, who support the Supreme Court and the agencies it administers. Until I got this job, like a lot of people who came from the private sector, I didn't really appreciate the job that public servants do, quite often invisible to most of us. But the quality of support that we get from Lily Judson's Division of Court Administration, Jane Siegel's Judicial Conference, and the many other agencies and their staffs and volunteer lawyers who make all these things run is really quite extraordinary. And I just want to say that in public, that it's really amazing the support we get from an underpaid, overworked, and often under-recognized staff. And finally, almost all of you know Peggy from some connection or another as my wife. You also know what an accomplished and delightful person she is. Any attempt to describe her coaching, steadying, loving support in both our public and private lives would fall too short. So I won't try, other than to say we recently celebrated our silver anniversary, and I only wish everyone the joy and constant renewal of a union with someone you love, who addresses every situation, great and small, with patience, humor, maturity, and tolerance. I've been asked what comes next. Due to the courtesy of my colleagues on the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, I'll be serving as a senior judge on the Court of Appeals and perhaps also occasionally in a trial court. In addition, I'll be affiliating with Van Winkle, Payton, Rimstead dispute resolution here in Indianapolis, and I hope to do some work as an arbitrator, mediator, and perhaps a few other roles. And as many of you know, I continue to have an interest in a range of cultural and sports-related activities and hope to continue in several nonprofit and civic ventures. All these things I'll be able to do as much or as little as I choose, and we do hope to do some traveling and spend some time in Florida in the dark days of February while you're up here slogging around. I don't intend to vanish from the public arena. James Madison warned in the Federalist Papers of the risk of domination of public affairs by what he called factions. Today, some version of Madison's nightmare seems to be spreading in the form of partisan dialogue aimed at placing blame or seeking to preserve and protect positions of power without offering any constructive alternatives. Too often, preservation of individual privilege or defense of party power is elevated over the greater public good in the actions and sometimes even the stated positions of our office seekers. We can no longer afford tolerating remnants of the spoils system as the necessary cost to our form of government. We all know the substantial problems of current economic climate raise for critical areas: public safety, education at all levels, a deteriorating infrastructure, not to mention public transportation, libraries and parks, and the myriad of amenities that that nourish a thriving community. Yet we're often unable to implement programs that can provide better service at less cost. Many others have noted the contentious mode of debate on issues of critical importance to our city, state, and nation. This is more than distasteful. It's costing us money and degrading the quality of service we can and should expect from government in all levels. Because I've spent 14 years now in state government, I offer only a few of many examples from state and local experience. The Kern and Shepard analysis of county and township government identified a number of steps that could be taken to modernize our 19th century form of local government. When Indiana started out as a state, the only government that mattered was local government, and it was quite useful in a horse and buggy day to have government within one day's ride of every citizen's home. In today's world of internet communications and interstate highways, these considerations are largely obsolete, yet we cling to duplicative and grossly inefficient ways to accomplish the work of government. A second example comes from the judicial branch, where in some parts of the state we have systems of judicial selection that work well, but in Marion County, for example, we have a scheme that purports to place the selection in the hands of the voters, but in practical effect leaves it under the control of a few party officials. There are several pernicious results, not the least of which is that the judges become a vehicle for raising funds for the political parties. Despite widespread derision, even ridicule of this system, few in government have the will to challenge it. The legislative branch has its own problems. There seems to be an emerging consensus that gerrymandered legislative districts are a bad thing. If the vast majority of districts are dominated by one party or the other, the primary election, not the general, becomes the decision point in the selection of most legislators. And the selection is inevitably reflective of the center of gravity of the dominant party, not the population as a whole. The result is a polarized legislature composed of very few mediators, compromisers, or centrists. What to do about all these problems and more are subjects for greater exploration at a later date. For now, suffice it to say, I hope they'll become more central in the public dialogue and that ultimately the citizenry will demand reform. I hope to be a voice in that discussion. Thank you very much for joining us today. I want to close by answering the one question that all judges get repeatedly. What do we wear under our robes? It's obviously a seasonal matter, and so I've chosen to show you what my choice for the fall and winter and therefore, since this is a disrobing,
Well, you don't see that very often, do you? Every day. Well, we're very grateful to you all for coming to be part of this celebration of a life well lived. We invite you to join us outside for a reception. All of the doors will be open in order to facilitate that. I hope you'll take a moment to sign a memory for Justice Boehm's memory box, the gift of our court staff from Supreme Court Administration and the Judicial Center and State Court Administration and other parts of the Supreme Court family. It's a memory box fashioned by an artist from Penrod, one of Justice Boehm's most remarkable connections. And finally, I'd like to say thanks to the court staff who made the day happen. The effort to stage this morning's event is in the hands of our Assistant Court Administrator, Greta Scodro, and Ted's assistant, Deborah Moss, and Debbie Baumer, and Catherine Dolan, and so many others who've made it all work so flawlessly. So we thank you for your time this morning, for your support of Ted Boehm, and for the work he has done. And we look forward to seeing you over and over again in the kinds of efforts to make Indiana and Indianapolis a better place that have characterized his life. Good morning. Court will rise.
This court is adjourned.